Scientists of Reddit. What is something you desperately want to experiment with, but will make you look like a mad scientist? Story 1. I want to take DNA from infamous serial killers like Dahmer or Albert Fish or the like, clone them, then have the baby raised in a normal, supportive, loving family. I'd study the kids all through adulthood to see how much is nurture and how much is nature. The opposite side of it scares me. Kids like Jeannie, the feral child who spent the first 13 years of her life in one room with the most minimal of sunlight, tied to a chair. When she got out and was moved to several different places, she could still learn new skills, new behaviors, and grow, but it's like one of those nature nurtures you don't really want to touch because it would require such an inhuman experiment to explore the possibilities. Story 2. I'm a physician, and I would love to see how far the placebo effect really goes. For those who are not familiar, the placebo effect is an unexplained phenomena where people who take medications that aren't real, but they believe are real, have an actual measurable effect on their illness. People with depression who take sugar pills report feeling happier. People with pain who take sugar pills report a decrease to their pain, etc. I've seen even crazier ones where people think they are having surgery for their bad knee. But the docs just put them under, make an incision on their knee, do nothing, sew them back up, and patients report improvement to their bad knee. So part of me just wants to explore this crap to its full extent. Can we treat chronic illnesses like arthritis, lupus, and bipolar disorder with just placebos? What about viral illness? Story 3. Experiments with social isolation intrigue me. Raise a child with no language and see what happens. No contact. Wild children give us some insights, but also a sample of the kind of trauma this can produce. Completely and undeniably unethical, incredibly cruel, but so intriguing. This have already been done and documented in the past. There was this king who believed that children raised in completely isolation would naturally speak Greek. So to test this, he ordered a group of babies to be placed in isolation from adults, and a few times per day, midwives would feed or clean them. The result of this experiment was that every single baby died, even although they were being fed. Story 4, I want to work on genetically modifying the genes that control our active cones in our eyes. Specifically, I want to try to activate a tertiary cone in the eyes of dogs so that they can see infrared light just like snakes can. In simpler terms, we could make rescue dogs that have infrared vision to help locate missing people or recover people in natural disasters. In even simpler terms, I want to make heat-seeking dogs. Not too sure, but I'd imagine that a snake can't really see heat like we imagine. Thermal cameras see super long wavelengths that are really easily swamped by the sun. And for a warm body animal, I'd imagine they'd even struggle to reject all the ambient heat from the creature. That's why most thermal cameras cool the chip in them. You can look at photos taken in near infrared. They are way more boring than you'd imagine. Story 5, I wouldn't say mad scientist, but medical privacy laws get in the way of a lot of incredibly useful research. Everything has to be so de-identified and confidential that it makes doing any sort of large-scale statistics nearly impossible. You have to make a ton of assumptions because you can't know many details. If I had full access to everyone's medical records, we could probably fix a whole lot of crap. Several years ago, I had the most ridiculous interaction regarding HIPAA. I had applied for a job at a drugstore and was offered the job. I told the manager I would fail the test. I was taking prescribed narcotics. He told me I couldn't tell him that. It was a HIPAA violation. When I went to take my pre-employment drug test, I took my prescription bottles for the narcotics I was taking. Since I knew I would fail the test, they told me I couldn't tell them that information. HIPAA violation. A week later, I got a call from the testing company telling me I tested positive for morphine and asked if I had a valid prescription. I told them I did. They asked me where I had it last filled, and it just happened to be at the Walgreens where I was now testing for. I had gotten the job application while waiting at the pharmacy. Story 6. Use the milk from orb spiders. They mix the DNA of orb spiders with gulls at Wyoming to build a better dental filling. They'd hypothetically last exponentially longer, would bond to teeth as an organic substance, and are stronger than Teflon. It would also be minimally invasive as to set the groundwork for more invasive medical applications, such as knee replacements. If you fund me, I know the orb goat and dental guys. Story 7. I'd never do the experiment, but it's hard to overstate how helpful it would be to have large-scale, longitudinal data on how different chemotherapeutic cocktails affect the evolutionary trajectory of tumors. The problem is that in order to study it, you'd need to give a large number of people experimental or substandard care, which is highly unethical. Perform serial surgeries even when they aren't medically necessary in order to collect tissue samples from the tumors. And since every surgery carries with it some risk, this is also highly unethical. Story 8. I would really love to have a hunk of plutonium in the attic above my bedroom. I mean, the right amount would have to be sussed out first, of course. They found that some buildings in Japan had been made with irradiated steel from stockyards near the blast zones of either Hiroshima or Nagasaki, and the people that lived in them had abnormally long and cancer-free lives. Presumably because, oh, there's a scientific term for it, where your body comes into some kind of homeostasis with snake venom over long enough exposure to small doses. They think that's what happened with those people and the radiation as well. Their bodies adapted to it and became far less prone to have cancer because of it. Also, it would lower my heating bill in the winter. Plus, I really wish we could just use breeder reactors, molten salt reactors as well. Honestly, I think the government should give them away to property owners, as it would benefit the United States greatly to have a populace of people off the power grid, powering themselves independently and greenly, with a stable power source that will last 100 plus years for their needs, all while depleting our vast nuclear waste reserves. The economy would benefit. People would be more able to afford housing, and emissions would go down. Story 9. Transferring consciousness to a computer so we can live forever. Or reproductive cloning, so everyone can have their own organs for transplantation. I mentioned this in stem cell class one day, and I've been the weird girl since. Just organs or the whole body intact, practically alive, but only kept around to service your needs when you need it? If you could clone a whole human body that came to life and interacted in daily life, would it still be your spare organ farm or a whole new human? There's also the body and organs having the same predisposition you do. So what if the heart you cloned had the same defaults as your now failing heart? Story 10. Transhumanism. I want to see a heavier push towards prosthesis and the like. I have a healthy interest in immortality. We are already seeing huge advancements in prosthetics, biohacking, and extended lifespans. I am happy to say that of all the things in the thread up to this point, this one is actually coming along quite well. And it has been around for a very long time when you consider old-timey dental work, hearing aids, pacemakers, etc. It's not even a question anymore of how, only when. However, considering the insecure nature of most portable devices, IoT in general, the good will come with an unhealthy amount of bad. Say, that's a really nice, super strong prosthetic arm you've got there. Would be a shame if it went all idle hands on you. Story 11. Serious answer. I'd take about 1 billion people, lock them into a completely contained living space for their entire life, and actually science the crap out of what people eat and what their reaction is to what they eat. I would measure every single molecule that goes in and every single molecule that goes out. Measure their weight, their level of hunger, the level of physical activity, everything. What they breathe in, what they breathe out. Measure everything. We'd know exactly if broccoli is good, or if cigarettes are bad, or if you should eat eggs. This is obviously impossible and cruel, inhumane, and I would never, never, never even suggest it. But at least we would know if I should eat eggs for breakfast or not. Story 12. I wouldn't be perceived as a mad scientist, just a profligate researcher. I'd be castigated, and my professional reputation would be irrevocably altered. But I'd like to establish the UK's first body farm so we can replicate the University of Tennessee's facility to meticulously research human decomposition. Ostensibly, I'd be indulging my personal predilection for prestige, as the justification for a body farm isn't compelling for some entomologists. It's a vanity project in their opinion. Others condemn the idea as a frivolous tourist attraction. People are amenable to donate. We just have nowhere to put them. Story 13. I work mainly with snake venom, but my friend called me and told me his brother-in-law knows a guy that harvests scorpion venom. It is prohibitively expensive normally, but this guy insisted you didn't have to go through the normal process of acquiring it. So I am imagining a sweatshop situation with various containers of scorpion venom. I feel like buying and possessing an old milk jug of scorpion juice would make me seem mad to say the least. Story 14. I'm left-handed, and I've always heard lefties are right-brained, creative, and righties are left-brained, logical. I would like to create a school, pre-K to 12th grade, that includes boarding where the only difference is that everything inside the school, door handles, computer mouses, sports equipment, and scissors, are accommodated for left-handed people. The teachers would all be left-handed as well, but the students will be a usual mix of 90% right-handed and 10% left-handed. Would right-handed kids in this environment use their right brain more because they are forced to be more creative? Would the left-handed kids become more right-brained? Story 15. Biologist here, and I want to develop an artificial system to grow a baby outside the womb. The initial tests would involve a donor uterus, likely from a pig or primate, unless we can get a healthy one from a human hysterectomy, which would be connected to an artificial blood supply. This blood supply would be circulated through the 37 Celsius incubator using a pump to mimic the heartbeat. As the embryo develops, different chemicals will be pumped into the bloodstream to maintain appropriate levels of HCG, estrogen, progesterone, oxygen, and nutrients. I would also need to develop a way to efficiently filter out waste. If we could robotize this process, you could leave it running for 9 months and get a fully developed baby without destroying your body. This would also eliminate things like fetal alcohol syndrome and other negative effects of poor diet or drug use during pregnancy. Of course, having said all that, it's highly unethical to test on humans and probably shouldn't be done. Also, very difficult to get all the chemicals or blood composition right. Story 16. Astronomers here. I would really love to get a hunk of neutron star and bring it back to Earth and study it. Neutron stars are, as the name implies, essentially a ball of neutrons where the amount of mass in the sun is squeezed into the size of a city. This means they are extremely dense, well beyond the labs on Earth, and thus we don't know much about their properties and how they work. For example, a small fraction of neutron stars give off a beam of radio radiation, which we see as it roars around, so we call them pulsars. What actually gives off the radio beam in the first place? No one really knows. It probably has something to do with magnetic fields in a young neutron star. And we have found a class called magnetars, where the magnetic field would kill you if you got within 1,000 kilometers of one. But yeah, no one has a clue how those magnetic fields get so strong either. So in conclusion, if anyone has an idea on how to get me some rocket tech to visit one in an evening, 60s cartoon villain style, let me know because I am so gonna go get a neutron star. Story 17. Self-cloning. I want to know if I have a better chance at life if my double and clone is raised by a person who cares, instead of by abusers who gave my start a huge disadvantage, putting it mildly. No, I am not blaming them. Or even if I am blaming them, it is still my job to take care of myself no matter what happened in the past. A person with my IQ and capabilities should be so much more successful instead of gradually having to make it up to zero, to emerge from a black hole of anxiety, self-doubt, and trying to make it as a loner. I want to see what happens with my generous intellectual and creative gifts if I were to actually nurture and mentor myself. Story 18. Well, I'm not exactly a scientist, just a student studying IT, but I'm still really interested in speciation and evolution. I remember watching a documentary about Hiroshima and how the insects have gone through about 40 generations. So they have adapted to the point where they can filter out radiation, but the horses in the area are filled with it because they haven't had many generations in the radiation. So basically, I want to introduce mice, mainly cozy, they reproduce fast, into different environments that slowly become harsher and harsher in an attempt to make them evolve. Like I want to make them completely aquatic, where they no longer need land and are able to live only off seaweed, or where their back legs become basically like a kangaroo that can jump really high to get around. Story 19. I really want to experiment with actual chimeras. I don't mean destroying the thing before it's able to be born. I mean letting it be born and experimenting with it. I'd start with small, mice that are born with their brains being 30, 50, 70% human and such. I would like to let them procreate and, with enough mice, recreate John Calhoun's study of overcrowding, but with way smarter mice. If I had free reign, I'd really like to breed chimpanzee chimeras, where part or most of their brain was human. I want to see how much that affects their evolutionary tract, and with enough time, will they begin to follow the path Homo erectus and further examples of early hominids did. I can't think of any real use for this study other than pure curiosity, but I would really love to see it. My brother will be home tonight. I'll tell him you want to experiment on him. He should be thrilled. He is a chimera. He absorbed most of his twin. He has a section of his back and one shoulder that have a different skin tone and is covered in thick black hair, like a scalp. He also has splotches and other pigmentation issues all over his chest. He suffers from an autoimmune disorder because of the two sets of DNA. Something about his white blood cells not liking the other half of him. I don't know, I'm not a doctor, I just live with the dude. Story 20. Physically writing this idea down on paper, I realized it wouldn't prove anything and would be pretty unethical. My idea was to repeatedly shock mice in a certain context to scare them. This really hurts them. They legitimately scream so loud you can hear it from another room. We would then extinguish their fear memory by placing them into the same context until they stopped freezing. I then thought, hey, what if we cycled this for a few weeks? And then we tagged the memory optogenetically, just to, you know, see what happens, and what cells are active in several brain regions. We need to study remote memory. Well, people have done work like this before, but it's not really something that needs to be studied for any purpose ever again. Story 21. I'd love to see how much we could improve on the human body physically rather than chemically, but using simpler ideas since bionics aren't advanced enough yet, such as strengthening the skeleton and joints with metallic implants and shock absorbers that would form a kind of endoskeleton. It would hopefully mean we can withstand more force before being injured, such as in a car crash, and we can lift and do things that require more strength. Also look into the possibility of subdermal armor plating with shock absorption. We'd be even more protected. And because why not? Of course, this requires a lot of unethical human testing. Story 22. I have been trying to make immortal rats, but no one will give me funding for the 3,000 different experiments that need to be run to test the effects of different treatments. Solving aging is the #1 biggest thing we can be working on, and is more important than literally any other field. Global warming is nothing compared to solving the aging crisis. It is the #1 most pressing problem that will kill the entire current generation faster than any other issue currently facing the world today, short of full-blown nuclear war. Every other health problem is absolutely trivial compared to finding the cure for aging, which affects everyone, causing cost burdens on mankind that make anything global warming will produce look like couch money. On top of that, it is a field that is very likely to come up with dramatic results with relatively low levels of funding. But anytime you bring something like this up, people look at you like you are a goddamned medieval wizard instead of a scientist. Story 23. I'm an aspiring linguist who would love to test out language development out of the blue. That is how individuals without any knowledge of or contact with language would develop a means of communication between themselves. How could that language sound like? What would its rules be? Would it be completely different to any other language on Earth? Thus serving as evidence for more ambitious theories like proto-world, not to mention utterly breaking generativism. Or would they develop similarly to other languages? If the latter, could it possibly be related to some existing language? Story 24. My then boyfriend, now husband, went to the US Naval Academy, and one of the craziest things about that place was how everyone looked exactly the same. Part of it was the uniform, and part of it was the generic athletic white boy thing. But I really think it goes beyond either of those two explanations. They just all look the same. If my boyfriend stepped away for a second, I'd lose him in the crowd. It was what I imagined being faceblind is like. And now a few notes. A lot of the features that the midshipmen shared, like their facial bone structure, are related to testosterone. When men spend a lot of time with other men and few women, their testosterone levels rise. USNA students are like 90% male. One possible and not unreasonable explanation is that USNA just selects for high testosterone men of a certain type. But I think it's more interesting to wonder whether going to USNA physically changes you to be closer to the USNA ideal. Would the guys end up looking less like USNAs if they went to Kansas State? Could your choice of college actually affect your adult appearance? To test this, I would ideally want some identical twins where one went to USNA and one went to a normal college. I'd also be interested to see whether the firsties look more homogeneous than the plebes. Story 25. I'm an atmospheric scientist. I've always been fascinated by thunderstorms and how they are triggered. We've known for a long time that big forest fires can start convection and create thunderstorms. I've always been curious what would happen if you lit a huge bonfire. It would have to be massive, at least a dozen acres or more. On a day when we were forecasting severe thunderstorms, could we create man-made thunderstorms or tornadoes? I actually ran a simulation with WRF where we pretended to set off a nuclear bomb in Kansas, and it did create thunderstorms along the shockwave perimeter. So if I could, I'd try to create thunderstorms in the Great Plains with giant fires or nuclear weapons, just to see what happens. Story 26. Neuroscience PhD student here. My lab is actually doing the closest thing I can think of to mad science while still being ethically sound. We study memory, which we normally do with fMRI, but we're interested in sleep consolidation of memory as well, which is basically impossible in an MRI. Even if we got somebody to sleep in that noisy scanner, the slightest movement in their sleep would make the data unusable. So what do? It's not like we can implant electrodes in their brain and monitor memory, can we? We can. The university hospital has an epilepsy ward, with people just sitting around in a hospital bed, electrodes sticking out of their skulls, waiting to have a seizure so the doctors know where it originates. This is how neurosurgeons operate on epilepsy cases, at least some of them. We have approval to run some memory tests with them, and we can use their electrode data to look at memory. At this point, it's just a bunch of programming trying to figure out how to analyze that data. Story 27. I don't know if this counts, but does anyone remember the documentary Three Identical Strangers? About the triplets that were separated at birth and adopted intentionally by three different families, having different parenting styles and economic levels to study the effects of nature versus nurture, who later grew up and found out. Well, they had actually finished the study in 1980, but the psychiatrist declined to publish the results, and the results are sealed at the Yale Public Library until 2065. I'm guessing it's locked until everyone who is associated with the study is dead. I just want to know, except for the obvious. What was so crazy about the results that the psychiatrist decided to do that? As far as I remember, the psychiatrist thought he was in the right, even though like three of the separated siblings apparently committed seppuku. And also, what are the results? Story 28 cancer researcher who likes to read up on natural disasters. What would happen if Cumbre Vieja blew up? It is a dormant volcano on La Palma in the Canary Islands. It's been hypothesized that if the volcano erupts, the island will collapse into the Atlantic and cause a tsunami that spreads across the ocean. How much destruction would it do? Can a tsunami actually spread across the Atlantic, much deeper than the Pacific and Indian? Would it cause a mega tsunami or be a lot smaller? I would love to study this, without the death and destruction part. On the cancer end, I'm convinced cancer is key to extending the human lifespan.